Welcome to Aliens versus Predator, a limited review show where we will be reviewing and ranking every single film in the Aliens and Predator franchise. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman from Jacksonville, Florida, joined this evening by Adam Randy, aka Adam Gumbert from Lexington, Kentucky. What's going on, Adam?
Time to get randy and weird, just like this cinematic masterpiece.
And we also have Mr. George Arevalo from Miami, Florida.
What up?
On today's episode, we will be discussing / reviewing Alien Resurrection, and that brings us to another benchmark where we will be ranking the 6 films that we have seen so far. So get excited. This should be an interesting conversation. Very, very close. I'm the only person that has the knowledge right now of how it all went down. So excited for that a little bit later in the show. Let's get right into Alien Resurrection, film that I can say one of the few fond memories I have of this movie is going to see it with my grandfather in the cinema when it came out. And I also read the novelization before I saw the film because I was so excited to get another Alien movie. So I actually knew how it was going to happen. And oddly enough, like I thought the book was like not nearly as weird as the movie ended up being. Couple of little quick pieces of trivia. We always like to start off with a little bit of movie trivia. Sigourney Weaver sunk that basketball shot first take that is uncut, and the look of shock on Ron Perlman's face is legitimate and real. It was astounding to everybody on set, so that's kind of a cool real life moment, that happened, and not just simply movie magic. You get a little, I won't say cameo, but early role of the actor who played Tuco in Breaking Bad. I'm looking that up because I'm a bad host and I didn't look it up in advance. His name is Raymond Cruz is the actor. So that's kind of cool to see him as a guard that follows the crew throughout their adventures on what's the name of the ship? Betty is the name of the ship that the folks come in, the pirates. Anyway. That's
United Military fucking weird kissy scientist
Yeah.
USSR spaceship number 5.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah, so those are like just a couple of little pieces of trivia. I don't have a whole lot on this one. I didn't look up much in advance, I'll be honest. I don't think it has as fascinating as a production history. Ooh, I do have one. So during the underwater shoot, Winona Ryder almost drowned because there was a miscue with the stunt person and the air, and she was calling for air, and there was a miscommunication because that whole sequence was shot under a very large underwater tank where all that stuff was kind of interconnected. It wasn't easy just to like rocket back up to the surface, and it's faster, I guess, in between takes just to give them some air and then keep rolling to get what they needed. And it was almost straight up not a good time. So always kind of scary to hear about stuff like that. Would not want to be responsible for that fuck up on set. I'll tell you what, like that's no bueno. All right. And with that being said, we're going to hop into some of our topics.
Well, I got a quick question. I don't want to interrupt you too much. Chris,
no,
can you look? We don't always do this for these movies. Can you look up the budget and then the gross for this movie?
Yeah, we've.
I wonder if that
for
leads
most of them.
into the movie. We don't get an Alien movie for a very long time. I'm curious if this movie did bad or if it was just like people, like it made money, but people weren't happy, so they just left it alone for a while. I'm confused.
Budget was 70 million. Box office return was 161.4 million. That's
not too bad.
That's
really.
what I have from Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. Not bad. Released in November of 1997, which is typically like Oscar season, which is very weird that this would come out. Like this feels more like a summer movie to me, like watching it now, or like kind of that late summer dump, that you get like right before the lull.
Dump
like,
is right, huh?
we'll get there in a second. Of course, and we had H.R. Giger came back to design one of the newborn creature that you see in this movie. So you could tell like they were trying to bring back a lot of the original names attached to it, not just Sigourney Weaver, but you see producer credits going to David Giler and Walter Hill, who were producers on the original film, and written by one Joss Whedon as well. Not the best reputation in Hollywood these days, Mr. Whedon, but interesting to see that writing credit. And of course, directed by Jean Pierre Jeunet, who uh, made a film that I really quite like called Delicatessen. And this movie makes so much more sense when if you ever see Delicatessen. What doesn't make sense is like why they picked him to make it. If that, it's like I get this dude's sensibilities. I understand him a lot better as a filmmaker, having seen Delicatessen now. But I don't know why they looked at that guy and said, "Yeah, you make the next big alien movie, one of the biggest franchises in our stable." So,
Yeah, this is unfounded, but me and George were talking. We didn't want to spoil too much, but I was like, "Hey, this feels like this guy had an idea for like a weird movie, and then somehow like Fox was like, oh, we need someone to make Alien. I guess put the Alien license in this movie."
maybe, yeah. It's been a while since I've watched the making of, which is out. They have great supplemental materials on the DVD and Blu-ray box sets. I'm really not sure what I don't recall like what the impetus was, but it is certainly interesting nonetheless that like they went this direction because we'll get into it. Why I think Alien 3 took a lot of chances and was kind of interesting. Like this feels all over the place to me. So. Let's get into general impressions really quickly. As always, George, your first rodeo here. What do you think? What'd you make of Alien Resurrection?
Man, so I felt things. Um, like so this movie sparked a lot of different emotions, not all good ones, right? But this movie had me like feeling some kind of way, and I want to spoil my rankings too much, but I will say to me this is not the worst movie we've seen. We'll get into that. I'll explain that later. But I had a good time watching this movie. There are some things that they try to do in this movie that work. Some of them don't, and then some of them are just your personal taste. I think the problem with this movie is that this movie does some really weird, outlandish shit, but they're trying to be taken seriously. Unlike, say, Predator 2, that does all kinds of crazy stuff, but they know they're doing crazy stuff, and it's just fun. This movie lacks some identity in that regard because they're not really consistent throughout, right? Sometimes they're doing some things that just don't make any sense at all. And then they try some things that, like homie behind here, whether you like it or not. I kind of dug it.
The new
But
one I liked too.
it
To
is
be clear.
risky. They took a lot of risks, too many risks, for a movie that has like a pretty easy blueprint, right? Like it has a pretty straight black and white blueprint as to what has worked, and they're not all the same things, like as you see with Alien and Alien. So this one takes some risks and tries to do his own thing, artistic, artsy thing. Doesn't work as much as I think he hoped, but I had a good time watching it, man. I didn't hate it. I didn't, I didn't think it was terrible. Not a great movie by any means, but I had fun and I had some moments where I was like, "What the fuck?" in a good way and in a bad way, So
I did want to quickly clarify. So I in my brain I conflated two different things. So Winona Ryder had a panic attack and like had a hard time on first day of filming. Is actually Ron Perlman that suffered the accident. It's because he bumped his head on a sprinkler and cold cocked himself, like was unconscious underwater. I was thinking of The Abyss where there was an accident with the breathing apparatus. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to correct that really fast. At least your second time seeing it, Adam, did you warm to this movie? Did you cool on it, or are you about where you were the first time you saw it?
So I remember more now because I'm an adult and not a teenager. And I feel the same way, but stronger. Where, like I said before we even watched it, and my opinions on it is that I I'm with George where this movie is interesting in its ideas. They're trying to do something that's different. That's cool. That's always a nice thing to see. But I think they do awful at execution. Like you can try to do something different. Like Alien 3 is a different movie, and I feel doesn't nail it perfectly, but they don't fuck it up. And I feel like Alien Resurrection fucks some of those ideas up. Not everything, but it was the same way. So, like, before I watched this one the second time, the first time I watched it, I'm like, I don't like this movie. The first half is very interesting, and there are good things, but then there's a very specific scene, which we got to it, which is the cloning tanks. and the movie completely changes, and I think it's really bad from there on. I think before that there's interesting stuff, there's weird stuff, but it's fine. Like literally after the cloning tank weird kill me scene, I don't think we see another full alien for the rest of the movie besides like carrying her to the newborn. We don't see any more aliens. Like it stops being an alien movie. We literally we see hands.
The water tank scene, right? I
No,
think.
that's before.
Is it?
Yeah, we do not see an alien after this point besides hands in the grate and then one carrying her. We don't see aliens for the rest of this movie.
Okay. Yeah, you might be right.
I might
It
be right.
shifts away from being about the aliens at that point, and it's
Yeah.
more about
It's real abrupt though.
this
Was my issue.
thing, you know?
Yeah, tonally, it's definitely all over the place. It's weird because like I feel like Aliens is the last of the Alien films that really nails the right balance of personality for the ensemble cast. This is another one that feels weird, where some characters like stand out a little more than others, but there's not really a whole lot for like the majority of this cast to do, and it's kind of a shame because they seem like they have an interesting backstory. Like I almost wonder if this would, in this day and age, just seems like it would be a great like 8 episode limited thing like on HBO, right, where they have more time to flesh out some of this stuff. Like I think there's a lot of interesting things that have happened between Alien 3 and when this movie takes place, and we get little spoken references, but like there's just not enough time for any of it to breathe, so it ends up feeling a little disjointed and underbaked, in my opinion.
And there are go ahead, George.
The other problem with it, and it kind of goes, it coincides with the two halves of the movie that you're talking about, right? Which is, I think this movie kind of intended to explore the relationship between this Ripley and this thing, and or the aliens in general, that connection that they have. The problem and why they missed the mark on that is because, number one, this Ripley behaves completely different than the Ripley we're used to for most of the movie. Kind of becomes the badass again by the end of it, but she behaves completely different, and it's not Ripley. And the truth is, for most of the movie, I don't give a fuck about this Ripley, so I don't care about her connection to the aliens either as a result. So, and when the focal point is this Ripley that I don't have a whole lot of a connection to, and a brand new like alien type ugly thing that's kind of unappealing, that's where it misses its mark, because I think that's what the focal point of the movie wanted to be. I wouldn't be surprised if that first half was a lot of like filler to try to make things more exciting and more because the first half, it seems to be more consistent with your typical alien movie, and then the second half is like this director, what his vision was, which sounded great in his head, but like you said, you couldn't build up enough to make me interested in this particular thing.
I think you could take Ripley away from this story, and it wouldn't have much of a bearing on.
Yeah, she was pointless. Yeah, she shouldn't have been brought back like this. And you bring her back and you make her less likable. Like she's kind of she's kind of mean to start off, right?
She's
like
mean and horny.
Yeah, and she's like fucked up, like,
which is great.
I don't know.
At closing time at the bar, but maybe not so.
Yeah, so you basically, I don't know what how to say it, but you basically just make Ripley not Ripley. So what is the point? Like, why do you do that to this character that is so badass?
It's intentional, right? Like that's the direction. It's an intentional direction. Like it's not accidental. Like she lost who that character was and forgot how to play it, but it's just a weird choice because, like, presumably, like you're wanting to pull people to the box office, so you got to make the decision. Like obviously they're going to respond very strongly to like Ripley that's not Ripley, right? Like, so I don't know.
Yeah,
why do that?
I will also say, I don't know if Sigourney Weaver comes back as Ripley or in some kind of capacity in any other movies, but if she doesn't, like, that's a horrible last taste, final taste in your mouth for that character.
Do you want me to tell you, or do you want it to be a surprise?
You can tell me. I mean,
this is her last appearance as Ripley.
That is three makes more is a better send off for the character.
100%.
That kind of makes me want to like this movie less, honestly, because that is a travesty that's how you send off this character. Because I feel like, especially for the time, like she's a pretty iconic female lead. And then this is what you do to, again, it's not the character, it's a different Ripley, but it's still the same actress. It's the same, like, this is how she goes out, like this is how this ends. Like, this is kind of shitty. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move along to our best death in the film. So what's your favorite death? I definitely have one picked out. So if you guys let me know if you want me to go.
Okay. I'm torn between two, but for varying different reasons. All right. Like the real best death is also the worst death. Um, and that's why all right. I'm gonna go with two because I can do that. I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna go with two things, and I'm sorry if I take. Are you guys picking this thing? By any chance? Okay, cool. You're not. So I'll talk about this, but after. But I want to talk about the one I care more about. The fucked up cloning scene. All right, that's the worst death here, but it's also the best because I don't think any death that I've seen has made me more fucking uncomfortable than that thing in these movies. And that should mean something because this is a horror movie, and I was horrified by that. That abomination of a clone at the end that wants to be killed, and then they all get burned, and all that kind of stuff. That whole thing gets destroyed. I think definitely deserved to die. It was suffering, whatever it was, but I mean, it's a horror movie, and that shit horrified me, unlike any other death in this series by far, for all the wrong reasons. But like, that's probably exactly what this dude wanted. That's exactly what he intended to do, and on that he nailed it. I was fucking grossed out. As far as your typical death, I thought the way this thing went out was pretty bananas.
Pointing at
And
the newborn for audio people.
yeah, and then it was also kind of creepy and gross at the same time. And then that's when you realize this thing is like a baby, like a toddler, and it's like screaming like in horrible pain, and as it's being sucked out of the thing. There's also some anatomy concerns I have with how exactly that worked, but but nonetheless, I did not think that's the way that this thing would go out, honestly. So I thought that was unique, and
It's so awful because
it's
the
weird.
thing doesn't make human noises
No,
really until they kill it, and then it like is scream. I swear again, I might be misremembering. I swear to God, it says "mama" in another cut. I might be
I don't
insane,
know.
but I was like, I swear it talks. It's awful.
This thing screams like a person was actually being burned alive, and it's
Yeah,
awful, but like
it's gross for sure.
it's gross, and it's like, but I mean, it's kind of the genre of this movie, right? Like this one does it on another level, another way. And I don't know. I guess that's kind of where I respect that. As much as I don't want to see that ever again. I don't want to see either of those scenes ever again. I have zero interest in watching this movie again. Like, you know,
It's they
it does
turn
something to
on
you.
its head a little bit, like the
Yeah.
airlock stuff that they've done a couple of times before. We're pushing it out into space.
Yeah.
Technically, they do the same thing, but it's just in a way grosser
Yeah.
manner. So
So
awesome. How about you, Adam? You got one?
You can go, Chris. I don't want to take yours on accident.
For me, it's so when Dr. Ren, kind of like the evil scientist, um, I mean, I think for a laugh to some extent, is the for lack of a better word, landing pad for the chest burster when the dude that's just fed up, like he knows he's gonna die, he knows he's fucked, is like this asshole is causing us so much grief, and he just grabs him like in a bear hug and just shoves his head against his chest, and out comes the chest burster through the dude's face. Like I think it's played for a laugh, kind of, because like you know a morbid laugh, but like a laugh nonetheless, because you're just like, yes, like this dude, if he's gonna die, he's taking this piece of shit with him. It's a really, like, I remember getting cheers in the theater when I saw it. Like, satisfying moment for sure. So that's mine.
Absolutely. All right, and mine is. I think this one was actually played for laughs and makes no sense in the rest of the movie. But I forgot. I think it's the general or whatever. An alien shoots the back of his head, and for the next 20 seconds, he slowly puts his hand on the back of his head and pulls a piece of meat and then looks at it and then doesn't fall. You never see him fall over. This dude gets the back of his head blown out. The alien stands behind him and watches him interact with the back of his head. And then we cut, and that's the end of the scene. It's like, what in the fuck just actually happened? That makes no sense. Like, if it was supposed to be funny, I guess, but it makes no sense for the tone of the rest of the movie because nothing else is silly. And it's just this guy's alive, but
this
and the alien's watching him be amazed that he's alive. It didn't make any sense.
the
Yeah,
wide ranges of deaths in this movie are great, and we're not even. I mean, we also, I feel like we can't we can't just go on without talking about the CSI guy's death, right? When he turned around and he's now being held on like a backpack, presumably with not enough hand strength to grab the ladder, but he has enough hand strength to untie or unlatch his seatbelt, and then he just kind of gives up and then falls into the water to do what? I don't know. All because he's got
It's
an alien
weird
attached,
because
a dead alien attached to his
he gets
shoe.
acid on his face though. Like it shows it going on his face,
And he
maybe his
takes it.
legs a little bit. I think like because they shoot it, but like
Well, the alien is holding on to his boot. You know, like I
yeah,
feel like you could have just taken off your boot,
or kick
um,
it. Like
or kick it, or if you do go in the water, like you can get back up. It's like it's
yeah,
water.
It's so
It's,
funny. That dude straight up gives up on life because,
he's just
like
like,
you
I'm
said,
done. I'm out. I want to die. In my opinion, he died of drowning because he drowned himself. He just wanted out. You know, like he was just fucking done. I don't. I don't
yeah,
fucking get it. I
that's
don't fucking get
bizarre.
it.
Yeah, it's very bizarre.
he's like, yeah, my arms don't work. I have a little bit of acid on my face. I guess I'll just let myself drown. Because again, the alien on him is dead. And it's just attached to his boot. So he could literally kick his boot off, get under the water, and take your boot off if it's easier. Again, your arms worked. He climbed with this dude on his back. Dude turns around and is holding him for 10 minutes. And then he's like, well, I've had a
With
rest, but
just his arms,
with just
by the
his
way,
hands.
and
And this
one at
dude's
one.
like, I can't. It's just, I can't. It's too much. I got to give up. It's like, all right, I guess this guy's dead now.
Yeah,
No, didn't make no sense.
yeah. Certainly, there's a lot of perplexing stuff like that in this movie. All right, moving on to favorite character that isn't Ripley. Not that I don't think anyone would pick her on this particular movie.
Oh man,
And if you don't know
I
like the name, you can just describe like
no, I
again,
do.
that's how
I
little
don't.
a lot of these people stand out.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite character. I there isn't anyone that I was particularly drawn to. I don't think any of them are developed particularly well, and they share too much screen time together. Like
Yeah.
they're in groups all the time, so none of them really stand out. So I feel like I'd just be just throwing a name out there just to throw it out there. So I'm gonna abstain. I don't have a favorite character here. I don't have a character that I was like, yeah, that one was memorable because they were all pretty much equally meh.
The only one that comes sort of close to me is Joner, the Ron Perlman character, just because he does get like the most like kind of like laughs and goofiness, like.
Yeah.
But I still don't feel like he's a particularly great character. Like I wouldn't put him in the pantheon of like
I only like him because he's Ron Perlman. Like the character's
Yeah,
fine. But
exactly like
like
he
if he
kind
he's
of
wasn't Ron Perlman, I
funny,
wouldn't care.
but his character is just a bro. Like his character would be like in the Space Marines, he'd be the worst one. He'd be last, fifth or sixth. He just, and it's like you said, it's because it's Ron Perlman and he sounds cool and he looks cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
I do sort of. Again, I'm with you because we don't really get any development for basically anybody. I do kind of like Winona Ryder, especially when we reveal she's an android. Then they make the weird choices where like the androids like feel pain and like don't want to do stuff, and instead of being robot, they're just actually humans, which is fine. But I think Winona Ryder's pretty good in the movie. I think she did a pretty good job. My absolute least favorite character is the scientist who tries to kiss the alien in the pen whenever they kill their homie. That guy's
Yeah.
fucking weird. Like in the word, he's more unsettling than the newborn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brad Dourif, voice of Chucky, Worm Tongue from Lord of the Rings. That guy. It's like when you need to cast somebody who's gonna do something weird, like he's a natural choice just to like sell you on it before it even happens. You're like, oh, this guy's gonna do something weird. Surprisingly, only character I've ever seen him that wasn't weird was from Deadwood. He plays a very empathetic doctor in the show. Does a really good job. But I kept expecting him to do something weird for at least like half that show. So
Those are two characters like they're supposed to be like the foil in this movie, and they do a horrible job of setting them up and making them. They're just like generic scientists A and B that do bad stuff. Like
yeah. Yeah, at least Call, the Winona Ryder android
that is
character,
probably the best character.
has motivations that are clear. She
Yeah.
like knows about the species. Um, you find out that like she's part of a group of androids, kind of a la Blade Runner, that like ran away and like hid themselves in secret. They ripped out a bunch of gear so they couldn't be tracked, but that limits what they can do. And like she's even like offers to kill Sigourney Weaver. She's like, hey, if you like aren't digging being back, like I can offer you death, like quick painless death, like if that's what you want. Like, and hey, like I think there are definitely some merits to that character for sure.
If I had to pick one, that's the character that I would go with. But I just felt like if I chose one, we'd all be choosing. That is the only character that really has any kind of development and an arc.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yes. She almost gives up, and that's where Ripley kind of becomes like likable again. Is like she gets her to kind of like, all right, like on your feet, like let's go. Bad shit happens. Um, what is your favorite scene in this film for
Well,
whatever reason?
man,
yeah, I guess I'll go ahead. And again, I don't know how many of these scenes are good, but the most enjoyable, I remember the first time I watched it, and then this time, I really like how they do the underwater scene. It's kind of like now watching it now, it's kind of not that it's low stakes, but it's not as long or as impactful as I remember. But I think it's cool that they have an underwater scene. We get to see him swimming. Ripley swims like them, which is a nice little touch. The CG is way better than it was in Alien 3. Like these actually, I think, still look pretty decent. And that whole back and forth of running away. There's two of them. They blow it up underwater. They're stuck under the things, the face huggers. I think it's a pretty cool sequence, and that's definitely new and interesting. Like we've never seen anything like that. So I think the underwater, that whole sequence is pretty good.
Nice.
for me, I was gonna go with the same water scene. But the next one would be where like the mercenaries or whatever they first meet Ripley, the basketball scene where she kind of shows what she can do, and this dude tries to attack her, like and all that kind of stuff, and she just kind of shows what she's gonna be about. You know how much of a badass she is and whatnot. And she's still being creepy.
Creepy is definitely the right word. For me, it's both my favorite scene. I think my favorite addition to the lore is the escape scene where the two aliens gang up on one of their weaker compatriots and use intelligence like of their like anatomy to like get out of their cage, right? And like in conjunction with that, like you see the doctor trying to train the alien and it kind of having a rudimentary understanding of like like a Pavlovian response, like anti-Pavlovian response, whatever, reverse Pavlovian to the button, the frost. So that's both my favorite addition to the lore, which is the next topic, and my favorite scene in the movie because I think it's interesting, right?
Great segue.
So that brings us to that topic. What is your favorite addition to the lore of the Alien and Predator universe for this film?
My favorite is probably also the worst edition, but hear me out. And it's the cloning of humans, right? Like what they do with Ripley. I don't know if they I feel like it's not the first time we hear about it in these movies. I don't know how much they touch on it before, but this is the first time that we get to see it actually being done. Um, and I like that edition the most because it was so graphic, raw, and I think it shows the horrors of cloning, right? Because it's something that people are kind of not so much these days, but for a time were infatuated with the idea of it, especially probably around that time when that movie came out. I don't know when it was that they cloned like a sheep or something like that, but I know around this time is when that stuff was kind of being talked about. And I like this because like you see the horrors of it. Because I mean, I'm no scientist, but I gotta assume that shit like that is what happens when you start experimenting with stuff like that. Maybe not exactly like that, but they die. It's dangerous. It's probably not a high success rate, and these things are still living things. They might not be the original person, but they're a living thing that suffers and goes through all this. And it is the very only bit of character development that you get for the villains of this movie when you see just kind of how diabolical they are when they're willing to go through this means.
Persistent, right? Too, like
yeah,
all the different tanks of like,
right. Not to mention they didn't even expect this one to work, and even the one that comes out perfect, she's far from perfect. Like she's fucked, like mentally, psychologically, right? Like physically she seems very gifted, but she has some issues, for sure. So
and they couldn't even get the name of the planet right. So what do you expect? Like they're bound to fuck up a couple times. Like that's one of my favorite touches, and maybe it's because we just saw Alien 3, where I was just like, You could have like an intern like go like fact check really quickly before you type that up or like set the line. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Adam, how about you, man?
No, I mean basically nothing. Actually, this takes away from the lore that I like. I will say something. I like how it's your background, Chris. This is what inspired me. Is that we have space criminals, space pirates that the government is paying. Like, hey, these people are in cryo sleep. Just go steal them, so we can do experiments on them, and no one will ever be the wiser. The reason I say it takes away from the lore is because we get away from the company, and now it's just the government, and I think that's weaker than continuing to show us things that the company would do, and now it's just generic. The government did it, which I don't enjoy. But I think it's cool that they are literally committing crimes in order to be able to take advantage of the alien.
I'd say it's more realistic.
That's more. It's just like the company
Who's
more
more likely to do some shit like that these days? The government or a random private company?
or Jeff Bezos. See,
I
that's the
feel,
question.
I feel like it's like
Which
a roll of
one?
the dice, honestly.
Yeah, it's 50-50. You never know.
I mean, the government has done stuff like not like this, but they have experimented on fucking people and all kinds of horrible shit, you know. So, yep. But I hear that. I felt like it was, and I think you guys mentioned it comes back to that. But I feel like there was this kind of overarching theme with this company, and they were kind of building and very slowly, kind of, giving some depth to that company and backstory. And this one doesn't do anything for it.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see. I think let me just double check my little list here. Oh, okay. Yeah, one more quick question for you guys. Does it hold up? Keep in mind this came out in 97. So do you think this film holds up in 2021?
I'm actually gonna say for the first time, probably not. The reason being is I don't think this kind of horror. Well, actually, I don't know. I feel like it's not that popular anymore. Like things to gross you out. Now it's a lot of jump scares. A lot of jump scares, more like paranormal stuff, evil things. I feel like this in a theater today, this kind of design, this kind of horror wouldn't sit with most audiences today, with younger audiences. I just don't think it's that popular anymore, and it's the only things that this movie has going for it, I think. So I can kind of appreciate it, so I still enjoy it, but I don't know that it would be popular today if it came out now.
How about you, Adam?
No, I don't think it was good when I watched it back then either. My again, like I do think that the designs and stuff are cool. Like I said, that CG thing is better, but if you have a movie that is, no character development, changes a character that you liked and made them suck, a couple years later, and has an art house film ending, I don't think people would enjoy this movie. And I didn't enjoy it then, I don't enjoy it now. So there are parts of it I think, like I said, I think the CG looks good on the aliens in the water thing. Still cool creature design. Even the new one I think looks cool. It's upsetting. Still think it looks cool. But the movie, like as it's structured and the story, no, there's nothing there. I don't think it held up then. I don't think it holds up now.
Yeah, I agree. If I had to boil this down to like one word, it's unnecessary. Like none of this movie feels necessary at all. Like I don't think it enhances like the story of Ripley or the lore, the mythology of the xenomorph itself. Um, it just feels very underbaked, and there's not even any themes. Like even the stuff that they're trying to do like on paper with like this interesting like weird interspecies erotica and shit like that, they did that better in Species. Like that's a better, if you want to explore that topic, that's a film that does really interesting cool stuff. Also a Giger design creature, way more interesting than this film does, and it's way more over the top and fucking fun, like that the original Species is did it earlier and did it better. So yeah, I agree with you guys. All right, and that brings us to ranking benchmark number 2. So we are now ranking the 6 films that we've seen. As a quick reminder of how the ranking works, so each of us privately made our own list, and in each slot. So first, for example, place, you're assigned a certain amount of points. First place gets 12 points, second place 11 points, and so on, all the way down to the 12th movie eventually. So what I did was compiled our individual lists and assigned the points appropriately and added them up cumulatively for all of the films. So here we go. We're going to start with number 6 with 23 points. Alien Resurrection. No surprise there from I think the discussion we've had. That seems to track with the. And I'll go over our individual rankings here at the end after our review, just so we get a sense of where we all landed to keep kind of make that exciting, and you guys can talk about your list. Just 1 point in difference at 24 points in 5th place. We have Alien 3. In 4th place with 27 points. This is a close one. Predator 2. With just 1 point more at number 3, Predator with 28 points. And then we move into our top 2 films. At number 2 with 34 points, Aliens, plural, Aliens. And that brings number 1 with 35 points. Again, just 1 point separating those 2 films. Alien. So Alien, Aliens, Predator, Predator 2, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection is our combined group ranking. So I think perhaps the most varied or interesting ranking was George. So George ranked them as follows from 1st to 6th place. Aliens.
Fun fact: my rankings don't match. Not a single one is in the order of the overall rankings, the average rankings. Not a single one.
No, yeah, you're right. Actually, that is accurate. So George ranked 1st through 6th the following: Aliens, Alien, Predator 2, Alien Resurrection, Predator, Alien 3. Adam's shaking his head for our audio listeners. I kind of had a similar response, but I didn't want to give it away. So George, why don't you talk about that that list? Because I'm really curious.
I will. And I wanted the chance to explain too, because the way we were all talking about Alien Resurrection, it's trying to be consistent, right? Like, we're all pretty down on it, it seems like. But I feel like I didn't get to talk enough about the stuff that I liked and why I have it ranked this way. So I kind of gave Chris a sneak peek. And number 1, I ranked these not in the order that I think I can make the argument that it's the best movie or the better movies. It's just the movies that did more for me, that I liked the most. So I'm going to weigh some certain things that are more interesting to me more heavily in some movies than the others. I also do want to say, I think it hurts the fact that we're watching them in such quick succession. And it also hurts the fact that I'm watching them now. I don't think it's because it's very hard for me to separate the 2 things I don't like about the movies that I have at the bottom. And so Predator and Alien 3 to me were similar movies. They were just kind of like action movies. And the reason why I went more with Predator, I thought it's clearly above Alien 3. I feel like I'm probably going to drop Alien 3 down further. I hope I am. But Predator was supposed to be an action movie, and they executed that. They gave me a solid action movie. It just gave me nothing I haven't seen anywhere else. Granted, this movie was made a while back, but it's really hard for me to really get out of my seat for that movie when they're really, other than introducing the Predator itself, that's something that I already knew about. So it's very, very hard. I feel like I might feel different and closer to you guys had I watched this movie a long time ago and could kind of recall and those experiences of seeing it for the first time in context. It's really hard to be into that movie today because it doesn't do movies, particularly the movie thing or story, particularly interesting. The reason I have ahead of Alien 3 is because Alien 3 tries to be this action movie, but it's not supposed to be. That's not what alien movies are. It gives us really nothing scary, nothing really horror. It's just and to me it's just kind of boring. It's kind of boring. I didn't like what they did with Ripley's character for the most of it. Um, but I feel like this movie really um does nothing for me. Like it was fine. It had a strong ending to it. You know, the final 15 minutes of that movie were I think were really good and excellent. But I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I dozed off a couple times in the beginning of the movie. Like I just, you do that shit. Um, because it was just so far and away or so far below the other Alien movies. Whatever. Now let me explain this shit, right? Alien Resurrection.
I feel like that's like
Um,
what needs the most
yeah,
explanation.
right. Let me explain this. So
Yeah.
there's a
For
lot
sure.
of misses in the movie, but I feel like the things that they did hit on just resonated with me a lot more. Like this thing grossed me the fuck out. I thought this thing was gross. I thought they had a lot of balls with with them doing this half human thing. And honestly, when I took some time to think about it afterwards, I'm like, this is kind of what it would be like if you had this. And it's not that far fetched because you've got Ripley who has some of these like alien abilities, right? But what if you had something that just took like the physical traits of each one? Like this is probably what it would look like. The mouth, the teeth are more like human. The eyes, man. If you put human eyes on an alien, that thing looks fucking like it almost looks sad. You know, like the thing looked like it was not having a good time. I don't know, man. I felt like this thing was in pain, and it was unsettling and kind of awful. The way that it dies, the cloning stuff, that shit freaked me out. I thought it was disgusting and fucked up. And to me, movies are experiences, and the emotion that those particular scenes and those things in this movie that got out of me, even though they were grossed out and creeped out, is far stronger than what Predator and Alien 3 did for me. Because those movies, I was just kind of like flatline throughout. Like it was fine. They weren't bad movies. It was just like, cool. But this time I had highs and lows. It's different than Predator 2 because that shit was just exciting the whole time. This wasn't. But the crazy fucked up artsy stuff that this movie did, it got more out of me. And I had a better, more interesting experience watching this movie than I did those other two. I'm not going to convince you that it's a better movie because it's not. I just liked it more. That's it.
I think that's why it's great to have your perspective, like as somebody who is like a true virgin to like most of
Yeah.
these. It's like it's cool because it's a valid perspective, right? I think somebody who is in the same position as you, maybe that's listening to the podcast, like you may come at it from like a similar viewpoint, right? Like, I can say for myself, like being completely honest, I have rose colored glasses for a lot of these films, like because I grew up with them, right? Like these are things that I've seen since I was probably like 8 years old and on, right? Like I think 8 was how old I was when I saw the first 3 Alien movies and the first like 2 Predators, like which I know is like seems pretty young. Sorry, my parents kind of just let me watch what they thought I could handle, and it is what it is. But so yeah, I mean, I very much have like a nostalgia driven attitude. Now, Adam, interestingly
Oh, real
enough,
quick, I want to ask George a question.
oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
What's George's list again? I know Alien, or Aliens, Alien. What is it after that?
Predator
Predator 2.
2, Alien Resurrection, Predator, and Alien 3.
So, as my list is different from George's, I can see why he put um, Alien 2 or Alien 3 low. Because we'll get to my list in a second because you're about to bring it up, but I can see the back end of his list, except for Resurrection. I cannot agree with you on Resurrection whatsoever. I agree with your points on everything else. Like again, we're going to get to my list in a second. A few things were only like a couple points away from each other, so the list might have
Yeah.
been different. But just man, you make your points, but I'm just saying I agree with the bottom half of his list. Why he put it that low?
It's super weak, and you're talking about a total of maybe 20 to 30 minutes tops that this movie had me feeling like that. It's a very small part, but it's 20 to 30
To be
minutes
fair,
more.
that's a third of the movie. Like this is
Yeah.
like the shortest.
Maybe a little bit
film
less. I don't know. Maybe if it was 15 to 20 minutes, but that's 15 to 20 minutes more than anything in Predator 1 and Alien 3 for me. And again, like I preface it by the time kind of matters, right? Like I'd be much more impressed with Predator had I seen that for the first time. Just like the technology, the type of predator or monster that he is. but it's hard because I already know about it. It's hard to get that out of my head, you know. So this list would be different if I saw it in time. Now, which is the worst movie of these? Like the worst put together production film is it's Alien Resurrection. I had more fun with it.
That's fair. Adam, interestingly enough, our lists are identical for the top three and the last film. Where you and I varied was on our fourth and fifth place. You, on your list at fourth place, had put Predator 2. I had put Alien 3, and we flip flopped them basically. So you had Alien 3 at fifth. I had Predator 2 at fifth.
So my list is the list and also release order. Funny enough.
Aliens, Predator 2. Yeah, actually, you're correct. Hey, you're spot on. And yeah, it is definitely release order. So I'll let you talk first about how you approached your list, and then I'll wrap up.
I went on my list based on what I thought was the best movie, right? So if I was like, hey, someone's like, I need to watch one of these 6 movies, I'm like, here's the order, you should watch them in, not based on release, like which one I think is worth your time.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I think we all agree these top 2 movies, I'm with Alien and Aliens could be flipped at any moment. Those
Same.
movies are both
I
fantastic.
agree. I might flip it again because I think I'm gonna watch one of them again. I think I'm gonna watch the first one again on my own before I go back, before I finish this whole list, just to be sure.
So no one can argue that.
Yeah.
I keep Predator at 3, which I know George, like as an action movie, again, at the time, maybe it was good. It doesn't necessarily hold up as an action movie. I definitely think that it is a stronger movie than Predator 2. I think Predator 2 is more fun. Absolutely. I would watch that movie any day, but it's not as good of a movie. Even the shortcomings of Predator 1, I think it is still a solid movie for the idea that movie is trying to do. So I put that above Predator 2, even though I like Predator 2 more. I would not say watch Predator. I wouldn't be like, hey, film critic, go watch Predator 2 first. Like, no, let's be real. I'm not going to do that. Again, I love Predator 2. It might be one of my favorite movies on this list, but I think it is just right below Predator as far as quality. It's so much fun. It brings the quality of the movie up, is what I think.
Yes.
And then when we go to 3 in Resurrection, we'll see where 3 ends up. I mean, I got to finish watching movies. I think Resurrection is awful. Again, there's interesting ideas. I think the execution is awful. That's my thing. I just don't think that they execute on what they're supposed to do. There's a couple few moments that are interesting, and I think the rest of it's bad. 3 is, I'm kind of with George, where I think that is a solidly made movie that is not super fun to watch through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's why that one is there. And I could, if I didn't hate Resurrection as much as I did, I could see where George would put that bottom. I wouldn't necessarily argue with that. I just think that 3 is actually a decently made movie, but it's not super, super interesting. So that's why I put it at 5. So again, I don't know how my list is the whole list, and it's also release order. That's about to change pretty soon, but that's how I looked at it. I'm like, which ones of these movies are the best? And now where we're at the bottom tier, maybe I'll add fun in a little bit again with Predator 2. And then I was like, okay, but which is actually the best of these? So that's how my list went.
Oh, if you put together some of the crazy good ideas from Resurrection into the execution of Alien 3, you might have a movie that's competing for the top 2 spots here. Because I agree. Like, I thought Alien 3 was put together fine. Like, it made sense. Like, it was a story. To me, a side story, but at least it was an ending for the character. It was put together well. Like, I think I got enough of most characters. I thought we could have seen Tywin Lannister a little bit more, but and it developed. It had a lot of characters, and they developed most of them pretty well. But like I said, it just doesn't do any doesn't have that.
Yeah, if Resurrection executed the Ripley, because there's a Ripley alien relationship in 3, straight up. It's just in 4, they try to make it erotic and over the top, and it's not good. But there's a similar idea there. Again, I think 3 isn't super, super fun, but they do that like whenever it doesn't kill her, you're like, oh shit, what's going on? When she figures out she's alien, that stuff is cool, and I think that is executed well. And the way she feels about it, I think is way better than anything doing Resurrection. Similar idea, but again, one is done much better. But if they would have had that execution in Resurrection, maybe I would think highly of it.
It's a shame that it feels like the movies kind of peak at 1 and 2. Not that the other ones are all bad, but that's the thing is like I had a feeling that how you guys were gonna approach your reviews. So it's after watching Aliens that I decided to this is how I'm gonna assess my ratings because to me it was the one and two were the perfect movies. One was just a fucking awesome movie, like a great that I could feel that all day. And then Alien and then Aliens was more actiony, more like whatever. It was a different type of movie, but they executed on that perfectly as well. So you had these two different movies that were both executed pretty much flawlessly, and but they were hard to compare. So I'm gonna be like, I'm just gonna go with the one I had the most fun watching. And that was the tiebreaker because like I agree, man. These this is 1-1A. To me, this is a tie if we could make it. Because they're so good for different reasons. So and that which I didn't really explain. That's why Predator 2 is as high as it is for me because that shit was just fucking bananas.
I mean, I almost put it 3 too. I
It was a
almost
fucking blast.
it's real close. I
I'd
was like, I
watch
could
that
put it
shit
there.
right now.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, and I don't know. Around that time, I can't imagine just watching that with a bunch of your buddies, bros, cracking some natty ices, and just watching just fucking insanity is what that movie was. So
This is a Miller
it was
Lite
fun.
household, by the way.
Yeah, the first time I saw Predator 2 was with my older cousins, and I just, me and my cousins that were my age, like watching it with our like older brothers and cousins, like you felt like very much the cool kid being included, like just because of how wild it
Yeah.
was.
Or even with the way we were watching it, it was just like, what the fuck is this? This is so fucking awesome. Oh, George, you're gonna love this. I fucking love this. Like it was just a fun time, man.
So my list very much like the way like I like Predator 2 and Alien 3 like are almost interchangeable for me. Like Aliens and Predator are firmly locked there. I mean, I've said like I think Alien and Aliens are both masterpieces. Alien gets slightly more credit for me because um I think I prefer sci-fi horror a little bit more like when it's done well than sci-fi action. And I think like the pacing is just like it's pitch perfect. Aliens is a grander scale movie, which is not a bad thing by any means, but I just like I love Alien. I think it's just genre changing, right? And then Predator, like I love because it's yeah, essentially like it starts off like a Rambo movie, and then like it goes to all these weird like places, and the creature reveal is super cool. The technology doesn't hold up so well with the camouflage effect, but everything else about that I think is excellent. The kills and the ensemble cast, again, like there's some fun characters and shit like that, and it's a blast.
That might be the
Alien,
last good like ensemble group that we've gotten was Predator.
yeah, because Predator 2 doesn't really have an ensemble. There's like a
No.
miniature that
Mhm.
doesn't work the same way.
And they're split up too. They don't often work together kind of thing in a
Yeah.
big group.
Yep. They have kind of scenes where they come back together, trade intel, and then disperse. Alien 3 to me is ranked where it is because um, every time I watch this movie, I like it a little bit more. And there's such a melancholic core to this movie. It's a very pensive movie. Like there's a lot of meditations on death and relationships and grief and loss and like um redemption. There's a lot of themes in this movie that like really resonate with me, and every time I watch it I like just a little bit more. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it has a lot of flaws. It's really a shame that as we talked about in our review episode, there was so much studio interference. I think if you give David Fincher like full creative control, this movie probably would have been a lot better than it turned out. But um it gets a lot of points for me for trying something different, and I think it has a lot of merits. It's that emotional core that like for me anyway, especially for the Ripley character. I always feel a little bit sad at the end of that movie when you get the final transmission from the Nostromo, playing in the escape shuttle, and the static, and then the little computer sound, and it closes down. I think it's a perfect way to end that character's story. And then Predator 2, like I said, I could probably flip flop that, and Resurrection just is what it is. Like I don't really need to say much more on that. I mean, it's just it's kind of a flop. I don't think it does a lot successfully. The creature designs are cool. There's some good sequences, but everything that I typically love about a film in this franchise, like it hits the mark for more often than not. Like it doesn't feel in a lot of ways to me like a real Alien film. So I'll be interested to see where some of these end up as we move into our next batch of films, which are going to be Alien versus Predator, Alien versus Predator Requiem, and then the final film before we do another ranking is going to be Predators, plural, with Adria Brody, directed by Nimrod Atal and written by Robert Rodriguez. So um, I think things will probably shake up, especially in this middle area, like third through ninth place. It'll be wild to see. Again, George, it's exciting because you haven't seen any of these. Like, I'll be really curious to see what you make of Predators, which you said you've seen parts of, maybe. Uh,
Yeah, like
and Alien versus Predator Requiem is the Predator 2 to like Alien versus where Alien versus Predator plays it straight. Alien versus Predator Requiem is very much like they wanted to go, like, because Alien versus Predator is PG-13. It's the first PG-13 film we're going to have in this, and a lot of people were mad about that. And so, to quote, so I took that seriously. They took that seriously, and Requiem is probably one of the goriest like movies, like, and like super over the top. Like they went full tilt. So I'll be interested to
yeah.
see what you make of that.
Damn, the first Predator movie was rated R.
Yeah, there are a lot of fucks, a lot of
Skinned people.
skin people and stuff like that. It's in the 80s, so
It would not be that would not be rated R today, right?
Says pussy a lot.
language, yeah. The sex jokes would probably put it to the R rating, and the motherfucker, like, I don't think you can say in a PG-13. You can say fuck a couple times, you can't say motherfucker, like that.
I think you're like a fuck in a PG-13
as long as it's not a sexual context.
Yeah.
Like you can say this is fucking bullshit or fucked up, like, but yeah, you can't say like
Interesting.
motherfucker. And definitely the pussy jokes would put it up over there. So yeah, that's it. We will probably do one more this month for July, and then we will be moving to a monthly format for the show after that, and do one of these per month until we get to December, and we'll do the grand finale where we'll have all 12 of them ranked and discussed. So thanks for hanging out with us for the last hour, and we'll have another episode out to you before August. Alien versus Predator. Good times. Till then, we love you.
Peace.